Hi, this is 365801, and this is Instagram chooses my next read. Now, what Instagram is actually going to do is help me choose the first book I see on my ARC TBR. Now, I have a list of books that I got from NetGalley and I've got one from Edelweiss, and they're all 5-star predictions. I wouldn't have put them on, or I wouldn't have requested to get a copy unless I thought this is going to be amazing, this is going to be fantastic. Either the author is someone I already love, or the cover artwork is great, or it's a really hyped book and everyone's going on about it. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to have a great time, and I'm going to give it a 5-star prediction. So I do have a list of books that I really need to get to, and I really need to read and give some reviews to. And hopefully Instagram is going to be able to pick the first one that I get to read, and just pick the order, because it's really difficult to choose which one I'm going to read first. So what I'm going to do is just scroll through my Instagram feed, and the first book that I see that's on this list is the book that we read. Now, I ended up scrolling for quite some time and I didn't come across anything. So I went to my stories, and in my stories, I then came across Harlequin books. Now, of course, they're going to promote their own book. So I wasn't sure if this would count or not. So I do have a Harlequin book that's in my Edelweiss account, and that is Time to Shine by Rachel Reed, which I'm super, super excited to read. But I wasn't sure if it was going to count or not, because technically it's Harlequin books. Of course, they're going to promote their own work. But then straight afterwards, Paranormal Romance posted their own post for Time to Shine. So I was like, okay, the stars have aligned. We're definitely going to be reading Time to Shine by Rachel Reed. So Instagram has decided, and it is Time to Shine by Rachel Reed. And I am already 58. Oh geez, 58% of the way through. I was gonna check in at the 33% mark, but I started reading it yesterday evening and I was in bed, and I thought, oh well, it's fine. I'll check in later in the morning. And then what happened, I couldn't stop reading, and then I finally did, and then I woke up this morning and I just continued reading, and I'm already at 58%. What happened? What happened? Rachel Reed happened. That's what. Time to Shine happened. That's what. Oh my god, I'm loving this. This is definitely up there as a fave for the year. I'm gonna add this to Rachel Reed's Yes, She Can Do No Wrong. I was concerned, like, maybe not all of her Game Changer series, obviously that's the hockey series that she's known for, did I absolutely 100% love, but I did enjoy all of them, and this one is very much on the upper end of enjoyment scale. I don't want to make comparisons to her very famous Shane and Ilya, but I'm loving these two. Like, I am loving these two, and I'm so happy, and I'm having such a great time. This is such a great read. This is the one that I got on Edelweiss, this arc, and I really wanted to read it like ASAP, but I had other things that I wanted to read as well. So yeah, I've got my tea and snacks, and I'm just still enjoying it, but I'm nearing the end of my battery and I need to charge this up again. So this is a story following, we have two characters, they're both in hockey, so this is once again another hockey one. We have Landon, who is a goaltender who gets called up from the AHL to be the substitute goalkeeper for a main NHL team. And while he's there covering for their substitute goalie, he ends up meeting Casey, who is kind of a young hotshot. He's like the yes, 100% sunshiny character. But they both have some secrets about themselves that they're trying to keep and trying to just maintain and keep a hold of. And Casey has a very large house, but he doesn't particularly like being in it because he feels kind of lonely, and it's like he's just rattling around in there, and a few other things as well. So he invites Landon to stay with him while he is covering that position as the goalie, the substitute goalie. And the two of them end up getting closer and closer. And at the 33% mark, I was like, just kiss already! Just smush your faces together! Because I was fully in love with both the characters. And I'm just loving them more and more and more. And everything about this is just great. And it's not fasting. It's a fairly slow burn, lovely, delightful. Everything is wonderful. I'm enjoying it so much. But we are at the 58% mark, so I am halfway through, and I'm loving the characters, and I'm loving how close they're getting, and if they're going to be taking things further, what's going to happen. So yeah, Time to Shine is very much it's on the way to a 5-star for sure. So I'm very happy that this was the first one that popped up on my Instagram. I will check in at the end because I don't think I'll be able to hold back from reading all of this today. It's so good. I'm loving it, and I definitely need to get a physical copy when it comes out. This is, I think, still got a few weeks or a few months before it actually is released. It's kind of a Christmassy, wintry setted one, so it would be a good one to probably read around Christmas time. So I'll probably have to do another little, hey, remember this, guys, at Christmas, because it'll be worth a reread for sure. But yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, it stays on its 5-star track at the moment. But this is just, yeah, delightful, lovely, and I love them. It's great. So I'm gonna eat my pain au chocolat. The only pain I like is the pain au chocolat. So yeah, I am having such a great time. This is such a great pick. Thanks, Instagram. So it is it's a little bit later. I think it's around 6:30, 7ish. So I did go upstairs to just have a wee read, and I got all comfy, and then we had the mother of all thunderstorms. I mean, like, the sky went boom, motherfuckers. It was like, hey, nature is cool. It was very much like just a reminder, puny ants, that nature is bigger than you. It was very that. Like, the rain was just chucking it down, and then just roll after roll after roll of thunderstorms, which generally is like cool because it's the atmosphere and the lightning, and like, I swear the thunderclaps were massive, and they were right overhead, and it was just like, wow, this is cool. But it did give me a little bit of a headache, and it also made my body just shut down. This is a thing I've mentioned in a couple of my videos, that I generally tend to be like a barometer when it comes to rainy seasons. When I lived in Japan, I was very, very affected by the atmospheric pressure, and that seems to be the case here as well, especially in the summer when we get thunderstorms. Any other time, not so much, but definitely when it's thundery. So yeah, my body just was like, no, we're passing out. You're not gonna get to read the rest of this. So I'm only at 72%. I've only gone up about 20%, and I thought by now I would have finished it. So I'm still actually really happy about that, because I don't want it to end. Everything seems like everything is just moseying along on a fairly healthy level. But like I said, 72%. 72%. You know that the 80% mark is when the third act conflict happens, and then you get that last 20% where everything gets resolved. So I've got 10% left to enjoy this before some sort of third act conflict happens. But so far everything's great. These characters, I'm loving them. I'm loving all of the extra characters. Landon has a lot of things that he needs to work through. Make sure you check the trigger warnings before this. For me, it's not too much of an issue, but for others, I think this would certainly be something that could impact you. So yeah, just check your trigger warnings. Um, and Casey's just a delight. He's like a Labrador, a golden retriever or something, you know, he's just one of these happy-go-lucky kind of characters, and he just has this one thing that is difficult for him. Um, Although I think maybe his personality is an interesting thing as well. And he's constantly going, "Huh, I should probably look into that thing about myself." Which I think is kind of amusing because it's like, it's self-aware, and that's what Casey is. He's self-aware. They're super cute together, and I'm loving all of the 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 pace that they're going at seems like a healthy pace for the people that they are. And I'm enjoying that too. And things are getting explored and resolved, maybe. And that's also good too. So I'm enjoying this a lot. But I have my dinner, which I think should be ready soon, and I'm gonna have something to eat. And I will probably continue reading this, but I'll check in when I've finished. We'll see we'll have gone through the third act resolution by the point I check in again. This is great, and I'm so glad that this was my first pick. Good morning, it is the next day, and I have completed Time to Shine by Rachel Reed. And it was everything that I expected it to be. It was very low angst. Even the third act breakup that you know is gonna happen, or whatever the conflict might be, because I'm not entirely sure if you can say that, that it was a proper breakup, or even a proper conflict, other than just a little bit of the tension. But this was a fairly, I would say, fairly low angst. It was still emotional, and it still, was affecting, and I still really enjoyed it. But there was no, the stakes were high, but not massively high. They were like, you should be together, but also it was kind of a stupid reason not to be, you know? uh, I should probably put spoilers down the bottom. Spoilers here, because I'm going to talk about it. I would still give this a 5-star. I had so much fun reading it. I loved the characters. I loved the side characters. I loved the dialogue. It was just little things that made me laugh out loud. I was just having such a great time reading it. So I can't not give it a 5-star. Because what it is low angst. And yet some of the themes are pretty heavy themes. So I did mention before about trigger warnings and stuff like that. So there has been, and it does give you right at the start of the novel, it does say mention of the death of a family member. So it's not on page, but it has happened to a character, and they're having to deal with grief and loss, and they're not necessarily dealing with it in the most healthy way. And so that's definitely something. So I liked how that was explored, and I liked how that was explored as a family. So it was very much like a family drama in that respect. And I liked that. It was good, and it had the resolution that you would want. Also, there was a character in here that is very sex positive, which I love. And there's also a character in here that is most likely probably in some ways asexual, but under the umbrella heading. And that's what I love about the umbrella heading of asexuality. As someone who's kind of like, oh, that sounds like me in some cases, because it's so broad. It does cover a multitude of personal experiences. And so for one person, they might consider that to be asexual, and for someone else, they're like, well, that's not asexual to me. That's fine, because that's something you can identify yourself. But for this character, there was never mentioned that he was asexual, but it definitely had that sort of feeling of he had at no point explored his sexuality, but he was not with someone else, but he'd never wanted to take it that far, take it to the next step. He didn't have those desires, and so there's probably an element of demisexuality there as well, which I love. I love demisexual representation. So I'm not entirely sure what Rachel Reed would class that character. But for me, as someone who is and classes themselves as asexual, that's how I read that character. And for me, that was nice representation, especially because it was an asexual character who, in my mind, was exploring their sexuality in and with another character who is sex positive and so lovely. Casey is so lovely. Landon is very lucky to have someone in their life that is like this. So yeah, that's one of the big things about this story. And mwah, chef's kiss. I really enjoyed it. I don't know, other people who are asexual might not see that, depending on how they identify. But for me, it was like, yes, this is something that I understand. As someone who is asexual, this is definitely the thoughts and feelings and the conversations were definitely thoughts and feelings and conversations I've had. So I liked that a lot. I also liked how Casey is not immune to having his own fears, and one of them was loneliness and being alone and being afraid of the dark, and this was something that he struggled with, and couldn't really talk to his teammates about. And you can understand that as well, because he belittles himself quite a lot, and other people around him do too, and talk about his stupidity. Whereas I was like, well, you know, he's naive, he's learning, he's interested, he's intrigued, he's curious, he's constantly wanting to know things, he's constantly wanting to find out, and he's genuinely interested in a lot of things. And for me, that's not stupidity, and that's how he was coming across as others were describing him. And so I'm glad that that was addressed at the end of the book. I don't want to spoil too much for you, but it was very, very nice. I liked the way that it was addressed in that way. This is what I would describe as a cute, sweet hockey romance with a little bit of emotional issues to work through, but pretty low angst. And I'm happy with that, because I like a low angst book. I don't want to be like, no. And so the third act conflict is a point where you're like, well, that's not really a conflict. That's going to get resolved fairly straightforward. And so for me, that's okay. I'm okay with that going in. So yeah, I'm still going to give this five stars. Rachel Reid's writing is what really sells this book. Rachel Reid's writing, her dialogue, her characters, everything about it is just nice. It's polished. It felt polished. It felt like a good, solid work. And I haven't loved all of her Game Changers books, as I mentioned, but I still would give them all like 3.5 to 3.75 as like the lowest star rating. And of course, Shane and Ilya's books are 5 stars, 5 stars. So I'm going to put this up there as a 5 star. I also liked Role Model as well. That was a great one. Loved that. Loved that. And it's something about this. I wouldn't have classed this as Grumpy Sunshine personally, just because Landon is not a grump. And I just loved seeing his character arc and his character blossom and him come out of himself a lot more by the end. It was great. I loved all the other characters as well. I'm wondering, is she going to have some spin-offs of this? Are we going to have more characters? Are we going to have more in this universe of Time to Shine? Because I loved this. So Rachel Reid, thank you so much. I enjoyed this immensely, and I'm definitely going to be picking up a physical copy as soon as I can. It's great. So yeah, on to my next one. I wonder what it's going to be. Now, flush with success with a 5-star read. That was a 5-star prediction. Perfect. I went back over to Instagram and started searching around once again with some of the posts, but then also just going into my stories and seeing what I could come across. And I came across a post that was actually in the story linking to a post, Books Above Everything. So it was their own post they were reposting as a story, and I had already come across this previously, It was their mid-year book freakout tag, and they had to put Time to Shine right next to We Could Be So Good by Cat Sebastian. So I thought, well, that's a sign that I'm gonna have to go and read We Could Be So Good. If this was the best books by Books Above Everything, they are promoting Time to Shine right next to We Could Be So Good. So obviously it's gonna be another 5-star, right? So I've just been having my wee cup of tea, and it looks like we're gonna have We Could Be So Good by Cat Sebastian as the next one. This is my ebook arc that I got that I really need to read. And I did start this. I read maybe the first chapter, but I also had a wee look on my Audible, and I had a little listen because it is Joe Leslie, and I was like, I'm not sure. I always associate Joe Leslie with other authors, but he did do, I think it was the one that I got from the library that was Cat Sebastian, and that was the first Cat Sebastian that I listened to, and I did enjoy it, and it was quite good. So I'm thinking I might end up just purchasing, because I have several credits. I think I have 6 or 7. Hey, why don't we just spend the credits you have? And I know that I shouldn't. The whole point of having an arc is that you don't need to then spend money. But I do think it would be good to have at least one of these books be an audiobook version as well. And because it is Joe Leslie, and I know that that's a solid narrator that I enjoy listening to, and because I do think it would be good to be able to do other things while I'm reading this, I might just buy this and see what it sounds like.
We Could Be So Good by Cat Sebastian, read by Joel Leslie. For S, a well in the desert. Part 1. Nick. March 1958. Nick Russo could fill the Sunday paper with reasons why he shouldn't be able to stand Andy Fleming. Not only is he the boss's son.
So I am heading into the city today, so I am going to be continuing on with my read, and that is We Could Be So Good by Cat Sebastian. I am in chapter 5, but I'm quite a ways through chapter 5. I'm halfway through chapter 5 because I'm listening to the audiobook. So I was listening to this, doing a few things yesterday, but I do have some things that I need to do today, so I'll take you along. And it does mean that I can listen to this even though I'm going off and doing some other things. I am enjoying it. Joel Leslie has a Joel Leslie voice, and I just generally associate him with Lily Morton rather than other authors. So I just need to start listening to other books. I think it's good, but I think maybe sometimes I would prefer to be reading with my eyes, and sometimes just the way he delivers some things, I'm like, oh, that line was good, but it's almost like it's passed me by already, and I need to backtrack in my mind. And if the delivery had hit, I'd have been laughing my ass off. But because I had to work through it quickly, hold on, wait a minute, that was a really funny line, and he's already carried on, and I'm like, oh, well, that was great, but shame I didn't get the full weight of that joke or that clever wittiness. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, but it's not perfect audiobook. But I don't know if that's a detraction of my own association of Joel Leslie with a different kind of author, or if it's Joel Leslie, or if it's the book. I don't think it's the book. I'm really enjoying this. So we have Andy and Nick. These are the two main characters. I don't think I've introduced it, but we have Nick, who is a hard-boiled. He wants to be a proper journalist, investigative. He's a New Yorker. He's worked his way up in the Chronicle to the position that he's in. 25 years old. He knows what he wants to do, and he wants to work hard to get there. He's also gay. And that's not something you can be in 1950s New York. it's still illegal, and it will lose you your job, it will lose you your probably your apartment, it will lose you your family, you will lose everything, and you might even be in jail too. So yeah, 1950s, not a great time to be a gay man. And then we've got Andy, who Nick, by his own admission, unfortunately befriends. And Andy is the son of the owner of the Chronicle, and is kind of a bit hapless. He's not even clueless. He knows that he is the most unreliable person. And he ends up being Nick's best friend, and Nick is the most reliable person. So it's kind of interesting, their dynamic and the way that they work with each other and the way that they. Nick really takes good care of Andy. And so we have this sort of like personal friendship and how things are getting on. And they've been friends for a few years at this point, halfway through chapter 5. And we are aware that Andy is now aware of his Nick's sexuality. Andy has been engaged and it's been called off, and Nick is taking care of him. It is one of those, it's very domestic at this point in time, but there will come an issue when these two young men are staying together, that's not good. But also Andy's starting to think about himself, and maybe there's a bit of bisexual awakening there. We don't know 100% yet. There's also, along with this relationship of the two men, sorry, there's someone doing the grass at this time in the morning? And there's like an investigation, and there's some police shenanigans and some money going missing, and Nick is doing the investigation on that. So I think that's going to come into play a lot more as the story goes on. But I'm going to be listening to this today as I go and do what I need to do in the city. So I'll bring you along. So it's been maybe a day or two. I'm trying to remember when, how long I've been reading this. I've not been as dedicated because I've been doing some other things, and I also have been doing some other reading. Anyway, I am on chapter 14 of We Could Be So Good. And I still have 5 hours and 21 minutes left to go. But I am pretty much halfway through, so, or more than halfway through? Well, 23. So yeah, 30, 27. So not quite, almost halfway through. That feels, yeah, about right, because I know this was supposed to be 11 hours, something like that. So yeah, I'm about halfway through. This is my dinner, by the way. Isn't it look great? It's very healthy. A couple of little scampi bites, that's what we call these in Scotland. It's a very Scottishy meal, to be fair. Anyway, as I'm saying, there's a lot of food, actually, food talk in this, and I quite enjoy it. I'm enjoying the food talk. We're at the point where there has been a bit of a development in terms of their friendship maybe moving into something more. And there's definitely been a little bit more discussion on the closeness of them. That was a little bit of tension. And there's also the discussion of Andy possibly moving on from where he is, which is working with Nick every day, living with Nick every day, and being with Nick every day, to moving on to doing something else in the newspaper, being a little bit more of the boss, because technically he will be inheriting it very soon. And I think that's definitely going to come into play in the coming chapters. But I also feel like it's nice, but it feels a little bit slow, and I think that's maybe why I'm feeling it slow, and that's why it's taking me so long to get through it. Because I'm not focusing on it and I'm not prioritizing. Even when I've got other things to do, I'm like, no, I'll listen to a song instead, or I'm gonna go for a walk and pop to the shops and something. I could listen to this, but I'll listen to something else, so it's not a huge priority. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna end up giving this 5 stars, because this is me reading things that I think are gonna be 5 stars, and that everyone on Instagram is like, yeah, social media is like, yeah, this is great. And so many people are saying how great it is. But halfway through, I'm like, yeah, this is okay. I'm feeling a little bit like I need something more. I need something more. And I think the story about police corruption and things like that's being hinted at and dropped and pursued, especially with Nick's brother being in the police and him being such a homophobe. I think this is all going to come to a head, and all of this is kind of giving me anxiety, and it's not the kind of anxiety that I enjoy. It's the kind of anxiety you get from what Nick describes as, these kind of stories where all the gays die in the end. These are genuine concerns. The stakes are a lot higher for this kind of historic male-male romance compared to a modern one. And as you know from maybe watching some of my other videos, I don't do well with anxiety, especially when my books are making me feel anxious for the characters, and their health and well-being, and that's definitely the case when it comes to 1950s into 1960s New York, and especially with Nick being a sort of investigative journalist when he's looking into the possible corruption within the police department. And this is all going to come to a head. I know it is. We can see this. But I don't know how it's going to. And I have 5 hours to deal with it. So, I mean, in terms of the writing, it's very competent. It's very enjoyable. Every once in a while, I'm like, oh, that was such a nice line. Or, oh, that's quite a funny little, comment. I still maintain that I think reading it with my eyes in an actual physical book form would probably be my favourite way to consume it. I enjoy Joe Leslie's narration, but it's not perfect for me. It's just a preference, and it's not even like I don't like Joe Leslie. I do. But this, for me, it's just feels a little bit slow. So in terms of consuming it as an audiobook, or an ebook, I think the physical is what I would prefer for this kind of story. And that might be because sometimes historicals, generally I do tend to enjoy them physically. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to keep on listening to it, and I'm also going to enjoy my delicious healthy dinner. So I'll check in when I've read a little bit more. Okay, so good morning. It has been a couple of days. I'm trying to remember how many days, but I am still slogging my way through this very, very slowly. This has taken me way longer. I had planned to have this read and done, and probably have read a couple more books by this point, but this has really slowed me down. And I've just been quite happy to read other things. So this is basically telling you, it's not a full review, but this is like, yeah, this is it. That's the way the wind is blowing. Because yesterday I did read a huge chunk of it. So last time I was about 5 hours left of the audiobook. And I listened to a great big chunk of that yesterday. I cleaned my house because I had a client coming over in the evening. And so, it feels so good to wake up and be like, oh, your house is so tidy. I have a couple of doom piles here and there that I need to deal with. But just in general, everything is pledged and hoovered, and all the surfaces are clean, and the dishes are washed, and I did lots of laundry as well. It just feels good when your house is like nice and you come down and your carpet's all freshly hoovered and everything's organized. It just feels nice. So I'm feeling good about that. I did end up like listening to a lot of this and be so close to finishing yesterday. Just before my client arrived, I was like, technically you could finish this. But in the end I was like, no, just make sure that everything's done. So I am 40 minutes left of this. I don't have a lot left. Honestly, I don't have a lot left. So I have chapter 26, 3 minutes left. Chapter 27, 22 minutes. Epilogue, 10 minutes. And then an author's note and end credits. Not much left of this. And I have to say, I'm wondering what's left of this story. And so far, I have to say I'm kind of disappointed. So I'm wondering how this is going to end. If it's going to end with me going, was that it? Which is terrible. But I'm actually convinced that that's going to be the case. So yeah, I have got 40 minutes of this left. I'm going to have coffee and I'm going to have a jammy donut. Woo woo, jammy donuts. Look at that jammy donut. Look at it. The highlight of my day so far, because this this book is going to be a bit of a slog, but it's 40 minutes. 40 and done. And then, you know what, I might even listen to it on like 1.5 or 2 times speed, just because I haven't been, that's the thing. So I could have been listening to it a lot faster, but I was like, no, listen to the voices as it's intended. And I don't think that's the best choice. So yeah, I might listen to it on double speed. And I will check in when I have completed it and actually give some proper thoughts on what I think of We Could Be So Good. Finally finished it. I don't really know what to say about We Could Be So Good. I am convinced that I think I needed the narration, I needed the audiobook to be able to get through it, given what I'm doing in my life and how busy and what I'm up to and that kind of thing. But also at the same time, I'm not convinced that if I sat and read it, I would have had a better time. Even though I keep saying, and I have been saying, the narration's fine, but it's not great. And I think maybe if I'd read it, now that I've actually got to the end and read it all the way through, I don't think that I would have had, I'm not sure if I would have actually been able to complete it if I had just read it with my eyes. So yeah, I think Joel Leslie's narration was absolutely necessary. I think there were just too many times when I'm like, okay, but there's something's bound to happen, right? There's bound to be some sort of actual story. Is it terrible that this is what it feels like? So let's have a look at the synopsis, because this is what you get. So, if you don't like reading synopsis, then that's fine. So Nick should have hated Andy when Andy Fleming turns up in the newsroom of the New York Chronicle to learn the business. Nick Russo is determined to dislike him. Nick has worked his way from a rough Brooklyn neighborhood to reporter the hard way, and Andy is heir to a publishing fortune. He can't type. He loses his keys and has never done a day's work in his life. And one day he'll be Nick's boss. Except Nick keeps rescuing Andy, showing him the ropes, tracking down his keys, freeing his tie when it gets stuck in the filing cabinets. Opposites in every way, an unlikely friendship soon turns into feelings neither want to deny. But a relationship that feels possible in secret seems doomed in the light of day. And now Nick and Andy must decide if, for the first time, they're willing to fight for what they really want. So this one seems fine, but I've seen another few things when it kind of implied that there was a lot more going on. So every time they made reference to the stories that Nick was writing to do with police corruption and the fires and all this kind of stuff, I was like, oh, this is going to be like, it's going to be exciting, right? And I just kept waiting for something to happen. And nothing happened. This was a very introspective and very personal and very small story about two men, and it's historical, so there's going to be a conclusion, and you're going to probably get the conclusion that is the best conclusion you can have given the time period that this is being presented in. And so it won't be, and they walk down the aisle happily ever after, that not that I particularly enjoy the whole let's get married at the end of a book, whether that's MF or MM, I don't care. That's not the conclusion, but I would like a conclusion. And this was just, well, this is how they can do it, given the time and the situation. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it makes sense for the historical context that it concluded the way it concluded. But also, the story itself just felt like a non-story. I felt like the two of them were going to do something. I felt like this was going to have an actual subplot that would be, a little bit more in depth about police corruption, a little bit more in depth about. I felt like there was going to be something more that was going to get exciting. That never got exciting. I was waiting for something to happen, and nothing happened. It's just their romance story, and I went in thinking it was going to be more because of some reviews or some synopsis I've read. But this synopsis just gives it as like, oh, that. But I read some others that had extra things on it, and it was going to be like, oh, it's a dangerous world, and they've got to sort something out. And for me, I was like, oh, okay. Is something really dramatic going to happen then? No, nothing dramatic happens. There was no tension. There was no excitement. Yeah, nothing really happened. So it wasn't anticlimactic because there was no real tension building, but I just kept waiting and kept expecting something to happen. So my expectations were too high. But then that's what happens when you go into a 5-star read. You expect it to be like all singing, all dancing. And this is not. This is just a quiet story about two men at a time period when two men can't really be together, trying to find a way to not only work through their own emotional demons and get to a stage where they can emotionally accept what they can have, and also working towards making it a reality in a time period when it couldn't, on the surface, be a reality. And you know what really helps? When one of the main characters is fucking rich. Bastards. So part of me is like, what's the moral of this story? What's the story telling me? That everything's fine as long as there's money? Because actually that's sometimes KJ Charles' stories are like that too. It's fine as long as one of them's a lord, has their own property. I mean, that's the thing about historical romances. It's fine if one of the characters is rich. Everything's okay when it comes to male-male romance in a historical setting if one of the characters is a lord or one of the characters has wealth and power. That doesn't sit very well with me, actually, now that I've come to the end of this story and I'm actually thinking about it. Because Nick is a truer character because he's not rich, because he's struggled, because without the wealth and power that Andy has, they couldn't necessarily have the life that they are carving out for themselves. And that's a sad fact. And I don't want to walk away from a supposedly happy ending thinking, Well, that was shit. Wasn't it awful in the past? Yes, it was. It was awful in the past. And actually, the conclusion is that it's still awful in the past. Nothing actually changed. Nothing actually fucking changed. Andy was rich at the start. He's rich at the end. The only thing that actually had any change was Nick. And maybe that was the point. Hey, Nick, you're a gay man and you can't live the life that you want to live unless you get yourself a rich man. What? Is that the conclusion to the story? Is that what we're supposed to take away from this? Don't worry, get yourself a rich man. I mean, sure, if everyone... nice work if you can get it. Where's mine? No worries. Just find a guy who just sleep with your boss. It's fine. Just sleep with your boss. the romance conclusions. So yeah, this is definitely not the 5-star I was hoping it to be. We could be so good, Cat Sebastian. I mean, there is a commentary, and I do like the reference at the end. There was a nice little author's note when she talks about the research and what went into it, and the reference to specific things like the charioteer as a historical text, and how it was one of the first ones that didn't paint gay characters in a specific way. I did do a bit of research afterwards and looked into the charioteer because I've heard of it, but I haven't actually read it. And I love that Noel Coward said, I should find it actually, hold on. I will find exactly the quote that Noel Coward said. So I found it. It is on the Mary Renault Wikipedia page. So this is Noel Coward. He said, Noel Coward's reception of Challen's, so Challen's Mary Renault, work and her portrayal of homosexual relationships in particular was less warm. I have also read The Charioteer by Miss Mary Renault. Oh dear, I do wish well-intentioned ladies would not write books about homosexuality. This one is turgid, unreal, and so ghastly earnest. It takes the hero, Soy Descent, 300 pages to reconcile himself to being queer as a coot. That's so rude. And his soul-searching and deep, deep introspection is truly awful. There are queer parties in which everyone calls everyone my dear a good deal, and over the whole book is a shimmering lack of understanding of the subject. I'm sure the poor woman meant well, but I wish she'd stick to recreating the glory that was Greece and not fuck about with dear old modern homos. Noel Coward, saucy man. I love this because this is from the 1950s. This is from, he probably said this in sometime in 1960 or thereabouts. I don't know, maybe. And Noel Coward is a gay man. We know this, and it's quite interesting because there's been such a huge push back against male romance being written by women, and there are some gay men who are very much like against it. It's been the whole thing of why BL mangaka have been given a hard time. It's why a gay man can turn around and say, oh, I'm not gonna I don't appreciate their work and it's drivel, and say something negative about it, but then steal the idea and write a book. That's what's happened. It's also why some male writers have felt the need to come out as queer in some way so that they can feel justified, or so that they don't get the negativity, and this push of it has to be own voices. There's a whole heap of things going on, and I love that Noel Coward's comment is very similar to what's happened and what still happens, and the kind of comments that you still get from gay men. And you know what? I think that's valid. I think it's a valid thing to have criticism of a work that you feel doesn't represent you. So if you do read a male romance and you are a gay man and you're like, that doesn't represent me, you know, feel free to be critical of it. That's why we have reviews. I also think it's perfectly fine for people who are famous to then turn around and say, "Oh, I didn't particularly like that, and this is the reason why." So yeah, I think Noel Coward is justified. I also think that, you know, gay men now are totally justified in saying, you know, this male romance book I read and I don't like it, and that's fine. And I do think it's quite funny that he, well-intentioned ladies, because we know that Mary Renault, as she was Challen, was a queer woman, but she would write male romance in this way. I just love it. It's so of its time as a statement, and yet it transcends time because it's still something that is being put forward. And I do think they're valid. It's valid then. It's valid now. If that's what your view is, I do think that it's just interesting that Noel Coward had the same. such a cutting thing to say. But anyway, this was the book that was referenced quite a lot in We Could Be So Good, and it doesn't make me want to read it because the criticism is that it's introspective and that it takes such a long time. Literally, Noel Coward saying it takes such a long time for the main character, and if we think of Nick as the main character, to come to the conclusion and to reconcile themselves with not just their sexuality but in a way of living their life. Cat Sebastian does exactly the same as Mary Renault. Maybe she was wanting to do that. Maybe that was the point. But then if you take Noel Coward's criticism of it, it's tiring to have to wade through someone's introspection and self-awareness and maybe lack of self-awareness and their ultimate conclusion that they are who they are by the end, without any real plot. It's kind of exhausting. So I didn't really enjoy it. And it does remind me of the buddy read I just had with Katie, with Treasure, which is a BL manga that was originally created in the 1990s at a time when this kind of, I don't want to say drivel, because that's really rude to Cat Sebastian, but it is that sort of overly introspective. The main character takes such a long time to consistently go through and repeat repetitively over and over in their mind of what they are and who they are, and have to, you know, battle their inner demons. And I just don't find that enjoyable. I find it really dull. I find it really annoying. Like, could you just build a bridge and get over yourself? It is what it is. So yeah, this was not the best choice. My first choice was much better. This one is not as good. So yeah, we're gonna have to go back to Instagram and see what comes up and picks my next one. But I think that'll probably be for another video. So yeah, stay tuned for a part 2 of this series where Instagram chooses what I read next, but also chooses my next possible 5-star read. I don't know. It didn't this time. Unfortunately, yeah, Cat Sebastian will not be getting a full 5-star, but Time to Shine was amazing, so I'm really happy about that. So yeah, swings and roundabouts. So thanks for watching to the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider giving it a like and subscribing, commenting down below if you've read either of those. What's your opinion of these 2 works? I feel disappointed that one isn't, but then that's the whole thing when you have 5-star predictions and they're not 5 stars. They're kind of disappointing. So yeah, let me know your comments down below. I'd really appreciate hearing other people's thoughts on these 2 titles. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to finding out what I'm going to read next. So yeah, subscribe if you want to see the next video when it's posted. I'm 36581. I make videos about male romance, BL manga, yaoi, and all that good stuff. Yeah, follow me on Twitter, all my socials, and I have a Patreon as well. For $1 a month you get early access and some Patreon exclusives as well. Take care, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!